Okay, we're gonna have to talk about the 5 worst junk foods that you need to avoid if you want to stay healthy. And I want to talk about the principle behind why I chose these 5, and I'll talk about some alternatives that you can use so that maybe if you're gonna miss these 5, you might add some substitutes in. Okay, so here's the thing I want you to realize is that when we eat certain foods, we cause what we call cellular inflammation. So cellular inflammation is where all these cells throughout your whole body are so inflamed that not only are they creating dysfunction in your body and your brain, giving you symptoms like brain fog and fatigue and muscle achiness and joint stiffness. There's so many things tied to cellular inflammation from a symptom level, but they're also blocking out nutrients and hormones from getting into the cell. So I chose these 5 because when you eat these 5 over and over and over again, you're not only exacerbating your symptoms, but you are also blocking the good from getting in them to be able to make you healthy. Here are the 3. First are the bad oils. So these are your canola oils, your cottonseed oils, your corn oil, sunflower, safflower oil. A lot of these oils you're getting in your restaurants. I gotta tell you, I've been traveling a lot lately and it's really hard to avoid bad oils. So we've got to get rid of the bad oils and make sure that we're leaning into the good oils. Second thing, we live in a highly processed food world. So all of our refined flours, our refined sugars, all of that is going to create this cellular inflammatory response. So I like to look at it through the lens of, how about you lean into more of nature's carbs, not man-made carbs? Because nature's carbs in general don't create cellular inflammation. Man-made carbs create cellular inflammation. So that's more of the cakes, the cookies, all that kind of processed flours. So you want to avoid that. And then the third one are toxic ingredients. When you go into your grocery store, all those ingredients in those foods are completely safe. They are not. And I'd love to be able to tell you that every time you go out to dinner, the food they are serving you is safe and healthy, and it is not. And a large reason is because we've added things into our food to make them taste better, to make you addicted to them, and make you coming back for more. So let's follow those 3 food principles as I dive into these 5 foods. Here we go. Number 1 food is a donut. Okay, so let's go back to my food rules. The problem with a donut is that it's got refined flour, refined sugar, and the bad oils. So it is going to absolutely spike your blood sugar, making it very difficult for you to switch over into a fat-burning state for fasting. But immediately, I'm not joking, like immediately upon eating a donut, you are creating a systemic inflammatory response. Now, having said that, there are some newly emerging donuts out there that I've seen, fun little stores, products in the grocery store that people are starting to catch on to. Well, is making sure that if you're looking for a healthy donut alternative, that it has the right oil. So it would need to have an avocado oil or olive oil or some grass-fed butter. I know it's possible. I even have eaten a gluten-free donut before that has been a better substitute than the toxic donut. Okay, number 2. Oh God, this is really hard because I like this food and I know you do too. So let's talk about how we can do it in a healthier way. And it's pizza. So here's the problem with pizza is that, again, we have the refined carbs. So it's a glycemic bomb. So you're just getting that elevation of blood sugar. And typically, if we don't put protein on top of that pizza, then what ends up happening is that it's just all a glycemic rush. So you've got, of course, you always want to make sure that you've got the grass-fed cheese. And I'm a big fan of raw cheeses. So I can tell you that at my house, what we do when we make pizza, it's gluten-free. I'm gluten-free, but not my whole family is. It's organic because a lot of the refined flours have glyphosate sprayed on them. And glyphosate's going to destroy your microbiome of your gut. So we'll do organic, gluten-free. We'll put some fun, exotic raw cheeses on it, goat's cheese, sheep's cheese, and then I put a ton of protein on it. My other thing to put on top of a slice of pizza is a little bit of arugula. Arugula, remember, fresh arugula helps support the liver. So that's number 2. Okay, number 3, another favorite of mine. Donut wasn't a favorite, but the ones I'm going through now have been favorites of mine. But number 3 is potato chips. So the challenge, again, with potato chips is that potatoes are high on the glycemic index, so it's going to elevate that blood sugar. But then the other challenge is it has all the harmful oils in them. So when you're eating a potato chip, it's so light and crunchy, you're never going to fill up. If you're doing a more commercial brand potato chip, they actually spray on top of that potato chip something that will make your brain addicted to it so that you start to crave it more. So I go down a more natural potato chip and I look for the ones with good oil. Most potato chips have safflower oil in it, which is an inflammatory oil. A lot of potato chips are emerging with some new healthy oils in them, like avocado oil and coconut oil. One of my favorite potato chips out there, and if you can find it, it's incredible, is a sweet potato chip with actually coconut oil. It was fried in coconut oil. And I have that at home. I'll sit down and eat a whole bag of that on a hormone feasting day when I want to bring up progesterone. And then I don't have to worry about it being a harmful inflammatory food. Okay, number 4. This is a toughie for those of you that are coffee hounds. I know this is a hard one. It's a Frappuccino. In fact, it's pretty much any of the candied coffees out there. I don't know where we thought as long as it was sitting in a coffee shop, and it had the name coffee on it, it would be okay. Many of the franchise chains, you walk in there and like a Frappuccino is a milkshake. It is not a coffee, it is a milkshake. So ask yourself when you're having it in the morning, would you have a milkshake upon arising? And I think that's really important to realize is that just because it's coffee in there doesn't make it a health food. Now I know we've talked about coffee and how you can use it in a fasting window, but Frappuccinos are loaded with chemicals. They're loaded, and I know there's a lot of versions of Frappuccinos out there. They're loaded with bad inflammatory fats. And even though they have coffee in them, they're not considered, there's nothing in them that's healthy. So let's just avoid it. Okay, number 5. This is another really tough one, and that is soda. And I know, I want to give you a soda hack that I'm watching work for so many people. I just did this with a young man that I was guiding through a fasting lifestyle. He was drinking 12 sodas a day. And so he told me he was food addicted. He told me he was drink addicted to his sodas and he wanted to lose weight. So what we started to do is just take those sodas and I asked him just to drink them in his eating window. And that was an incredible hack because it took us about 3 months where all he could do is drink that soda in his eating window, leaving about 15 hours of fasting. And within about the fourth month, he started to lose his cravings. By 6 months, he was completely off his soda addiction. So remember, you can create some food rules for yourself in that fasting lifestyle. They're going to dramatically help you overcome some of the addictions you've got with some of the foods that I just mentioned. I hope we all know that sugar is a chronic inflammatory food. Whether it's in your donut, whether it's in your soda, the abundance of sugar is causing this chronic inflammatory situation in your body. It's also giving you a dopamine hit, meaning that the dopamine hit's going to be so high that when you actually bounce back afterwards, you're going to feel so low. So with soda, you get this dopamine rush, you get the sugar bomb that causes a massive surge of sugar, and then there's a crash. And when the crash happens a couple hours later, what ends up happening is you go and crave it again. You're never going to drink a soda and have this mind go, oh, okay, I feel satisfied, I won't drink another one. Because soda with so much sugar creates a dopamine response, and dopamine is never, ever satisfied. Let's talk about butter. I know we've all become a little butter obsessed, and some people I know are eating butter to lose weight. So let's debunk this myth about butter and weight loss, and let me show you 3 different foods I want you to lean into that are better than butter that will support your weight loss journey. Let's dive in. The first thing I think we got to ask ourselves is where along the nutritional line did we decide that butter was a great tool for weight loss? And I think it really started back in the Atkins days. You remember the Atkins diet where everybody was eating a ton of fat and they were eating all kinds of fat, good fat and bad fat. There was meat and fat. But then we started to realize, wait a second, there's a difference between good fat and bad fat. And so we evolved into the ketogenic movement, where all of a sudden we said carbs are bad, but fat is good fat is good. So we all moved away from refined carbohydrate. We started to eat more of nature's carbs, and we started to really think we had to bring our fat levels up so that we could move into ketosis. And so that's where grass-fed butter started to really make a comeback, or it had had its debut. And then out of the keto movement, we started putting butter in our coffee because we were looking at butter as a tool to kill our hunger in the morning so that we could be into these longer fasted states. So all of those kind of got us to this place of understanding that fat might actually help us, not hurt us. But I want to evolve this to a new place because we are trying to metabolically switch for weight loss. That's what we're trying to do. So if you're trying to get into the fat burning state and burn fat for energy through fasting, there are 3 foods you want to bring in before you go into your fasted state that will help you burn more fat in these states. So here we go. Here's the first one, is that you want to focus on protein. Can you bring your protein level up? I feel like protein is the new butter for weight loss. Really, I want you to think about this for a moment. When we bring protein up, we stimulate something called mTOR. And mTOR is where we start to see growth of muscles. So you'll start to see that your muscles will get stronger. When your muscles get stronger, you create more insulin receptor sites. When you have more insulin receptor sites, there's more doors for your body to push glucose into muscles. When your body's pushing glucose into muscles, now that muscle can be used for energy, like when you're working out, and not stored as fat. When you have less muscle, you have less insulin receptor sites. When there are less insulin receptor sites, there's not as many openings for glucose to get pushed in, and that glucose will be stored as fat. I want to rebrand fat. Fat is just excess. Your body put excess glucose, it put excess hormones, excess toxins. So let's create more muscle so it can put the glucose into the muscle to be used for our benefit. So 1 gram of protein for every pound of body weight you want to be. I really encourage you to do protein cycling, where every couple hours you're doing another 30 grams of protein so you can trigger amino acid receptor sites. If that's brand new, I've done a ton of videos. I'm sure my team will link some videos in here for you to lean into to understand protein cycling. But the protein is the new butter for weight loss. It is really, really powerful. So that's your first one. The second one is I want you to look at other good fats, specifically MCT oil. So think of this metabolic switch as needing some lubrication. So sometimes we need to lean into other fats, and MCT oil is the one that switches you over the best. This is why MCT oil in your coffee in the morning can actually help you elongate your fasting window, putting you in this fasted state where you're burning fat for a longer period of time. So what MCT oil will do in your coffee as you switch over is it makes it easier to switch, and all of a sudden now MCT oil helps you create ketones, and those ketones will go up into the brain and kill your hunger hormone. So when we're looking at fat loss, we're also looking at how do we make sure you're not hungry in your fasted state. So you can really help minimize the hunger in that fasted state by adding MCT oil in, specifically in your coffee in the morning. Okay, my last food group, really, and something I really encourage you to add in your sugar burner state when you are eating, and that is fiber. So I want you to think of fiber as brakes on your blood sugar. So when I'll give you an example of something that I love to break my fast with. Usually around noon, I will make a big green salad. And I'll put a ton of greens in there so that I can make sure that my microbiome is well fed while I put a ton of protein on that. That's a pretty common first meal that I'll have. But what fiber is doing is it's feeding the bacteria that balance your blood sugar. So when you add in that extra fiber and that blood sugar is more balanced, what ends up happening is that you're going to switch over into the fat burning state faster. The second part about fiber that's so important is that it feeds a set of bacteria that break estrogen down. And so when we add in more fiber, what happens is we feed the bacteria that break that estrogen down. If you don't feed those bacteria and estrogen doesn't get broken down, it will get stored as fat. So we gotta think about food as this incredible weight loss tool in this really, it's like a chemistry experiment that we're talking about here. Feeding that microbiome so it can break down estrogen. We're looking at protein to open up insulin receptor sites. so that we can drive glucose into your muscles, not into fat, and we're lubricating the metabolic switch using these good oils. There is a science to weight loss. So if you've never heard that before, 2 things. Don't give up on yourself. Try these 3 things. Spread the word so we can make weight loss effortless for people. And let's start all embracing this idea of metabolic switching as the weight loss tool. And if you can learn how to work with your body so it doesn't have to store that excess in fat, you will find that you can effortlessly lose weight and you can eat a lot of food. It's not about deprivation. It's about tapping into the science of your body. Okay, what is an anti-nutrient? So an anti-nutrient is something that robs your body of nutrients. So it's going to rob you of vitamins. It's going to rob you of minerals. So remember that an antioxidant is going to help get rid of toxins. It's going to rob you of toxins. It's going to make sure that toxins don't get into the cells. Anti-nutrients are actually doing the opposite of that. They are depleting you of certain vitamins and minerals. And I just want to say, for the sake of this video, that some of the worst anti-nutrients, and we gotta get this into everybody's mind, are some of the things that you are eating on a regular basis in the Western diet. So these are your refined flours, your refined sugars, your bad oils. Every time you are eating those, I know it tastes good, but what I want you to think about is you are depleting yourself of vitamins and minerals. So yes, every once in a while it's going to be okay, but over a long-term basis really sets you up for a whole host of health problems. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about, and I'm just going to clump them all into one category, is that I want you to avoid the Western diet, the Western standard diet. We used to call it the American standard diet, but unfortunately, our horrific diet has gone out into the rest of the world. And the Western standard of diet is the refined flours, the refined sugars, and the bad oils. That is the number one food category I just want you to get rid of because it's packed with anti-nutrients. Now, the second category I'm going to talk about is going to be surprising. It's one that I've talked a little bit about on this channel, but not as much because it's complicated. So a health food that typically can be an anti-nutrient is anything with lectin. Okay, I know all of you that have been like, I've been waiting for you to talk about oxalates and lectins. What is your opinion on lectins? Here's my opinion. We tend to think of lectins as being harmful to the gut. So a lot of people have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. A lot of people who have digestive problems don't do well with lectins. And so we sort of put those people over there in a corner and we're like, well, sorry for you. Lectins might affect you and don't affect me. Well, unfortunately, they affect all of us. Stick with me as I walk you through this process and I tell you the worst offenders. And then I think what you're going to probably say to yourself or leave a comment for me in there is going to be, well, does that mean I need to get rid of all of those? No, I'm going to give you that solution. So let's just start here with this lectin idea. So lectins, remember, they have the reason that they're challenging is they're a defense mechanism that plants put out to protect themselves. That's all a lectin is. It's a defense mechanism so the poor plant can stay alive. Plants want to stay alive too, believe it or not. They have this lectin quality that actually is toxic. And the way that it is toxic is that it can absolutely destroy our gut microbiome and it can pull nutrients out of our body, vitamins and minerals. Now, in nature, lectins, these plants that are high in lectins, are there to create a warning signal so that an animal doesn't come and eat it and destroy it. But when we eat it, it can destroy our microbiome and it can pull nutrients out. So there's a couple of categories of people that really need to think about no lectins. And I'm just going to put this out here. The first category is anybody with some gut inflammation. So those of you that have bloating, those of you that have chronic digestive issues, this is a stomach pain. You know, it's like years ago we were like, let's pull wheat and gluten out and see what happens. And at first the whole world was like, that's crazy. And then everybody started doing it because they saw that their gut improved. If you are having a gut challenge and you're really struggling and you can't seem to find a door out, try temporarily pulling these lectins out. So it will absolutely help bring some inflammation down. Now, the other category of people that I think is really important for us to talk about, and unfortunately is a growing category of people, is autoimmune diseases. So anybody with an autoimmune condition has a gut issue. So that's RA, that's psoriasis, that's Hashimoto's. All of these autoimmune conditions have there's a gut root cause. So if you're trying to improve that, how about you pull some lectins out? And I'm going to put in here a 2015 study found that lectins are especially damaging for people with an autoimmune condition. So if you have an autoimmune condition and you've thought you were free from the lectin debacle, might be time to just try 30 days without them. And I'll give you the worst ones here in a moment. But and let's see, how do your symptoms? I mean, try it on yourself. Be your own N of one. So there was also, I want to point out another study, a 2015 study referenced in below, I'll put down here, and here's a direct quote from the study, that because of their binding properties, lectins can cause nutrient deficiencies, they can disrupt digestion, and they can cause severe intestinal damage. Now, as I go through what the worst lectin offenders, if you are eating a lot of these, here's how I want you to think about this when you're applying it to your fasting lifestyle. So first, if these are anti-nutrients and they are depleting your body of vitamins and minerals, then we go into a fasted state, and when we're in a fasted state, we're already depleting ourselves even more of vitamins and minerals. We might want to lean into some of the mineral packets that I've talked about here. We might want to add in some different versions of electrolytes, or some of the more natural electrolyte mineral products like bean minerals that I've brought you. They might be of benefit in your fasting window so that you can bring those nutrient levels up. And one of the way you know that you might be low in vitamins and minerals is how you feel in the fasting window. If you feel horrible, it may be because you put yourself in this real nutrient deficit state. And part of that could be because you've been doing the Western standard diet and you've been eating lots of lectin. And so you're already deficient, and then you go into fasting and you feel horrible. So when we talk about adding some of these things in, awesome. But also when you go back to food, let's make sure that we're avoiding those things. Now, the list that I'm about to share with you has has about 7 different worst offenders for lectins. But what I want to explain to you is that if you love these foods, that you might try water-based cooking or boiling these foods. They have shown to kill 95% of lectin. So if you are soaking, even almonds, let's just talk about almonds for a second. They're one of the worst lectin offenders. So with almonds, what you might decide to do is soak them. And research shows about 5 hours or more of soaking these lectin-rich foods can absolutely pull 95% of lectins out. Number 1 is wheat. Now, I want to talk about wheat for a second because it's really hard to find good quality wheat. And some wheat is good, some wheat is bad. Most of it is bad. So when you're looking for wheat, the best wheat that you should be looking for are ancient grains. Something that says ancient grains means it's been sprouted, it hasn't been processed. So you want more of the ancient grain type wheat if you're going to go wheat. And then make sure that you're doing organic because you want to not have the pesticides sprayed on them. Pesticides, by the way, are an endocrine disruptor. So if you're trying to balance your hormones, let's get rid of the pesticides. Okay, second one, raw or roasted peanuts. So I talk a lot about nuts here, a ton about nuts on my channel. Nuts can be in a raw form, can have enzymes in them and prebiotic fibers in them that really support a healthy microbiome. But there is one nut I can't find anything good about, and that is the peanut. Except for when you're at the ballpark and you want to break them open and pop them in your mouth. That's a whole lot of fun, but it's not healthy. But it's good it's good dopamine. That's what I like when I go to the ballpark. But outside of that, no peanut, because peanuts are so high in lectins, even in the raw form. So let's get rid of the peanuts. Okay, third one. This is one we need to have a long discussion about because this food has just been needs a PR team. And it's soybean. I was just out to dinner the other night and somebody was like, we were ordering something and we were talking about hormones in food, which happens a lot when you sit at a dinner table with me. And somebody's like, yeah, I know, no soybeans. So soybeans got a bad rap because years ago, they were considered a bad food when they were highly, like a genetically modified. That would be a processed soybean. If they were genetically modified, if they were non-organic, sprayed with pesticides, yes, that's not healthy. But an organic, non-GMO soybean is phenomenal for your estrogen levels. But if you have a gut issue, we might need to soak them and cook them in water-based cooking so that we can get rid of the lectin. Okay, last couple ones. Tomatoes. So it's interesting, if you've read any books on diet and arthritis, tomatoes always gets thrown in there. You know, the nightshade plants. And so if you, of course, are having an autoimmune condition and you have some gut issues, just stay off tomatoes. I know if you love tomatoes, that's hard, but how about you stay off of it and then every once in a while you pop on it and then see how you feel. It's a great strategy for testing these foods out. Take them out and then add them in one at a time and see how you feel. The other one is potatoes. So you can boil potatoes. Water-based cooking destroys 95% of the lectins. So just boil your potatoes. Eggplants. So eggplant is another one. Again, we're talking about a nightshade plant. I know a lot of, like I just spent a month in Europe and I know that on every menu I could find an eggplant. So again, just making sure that everything in moderation, that we're not eating eggplants all day long. And if you have an autoimmune condition, let's get rid of the eggplant. And then the last one is the red kidney bean. Now, if you're getting it from a can, yes, that can definitely, there's a lot of reasons why you don't want it from a can. But let's say we go back to, I really love this idea of water-based cooking, like boiling. If you boil your kidney beans, so why don't you make it from scratch? Get kidney beans, boil them, make them from scratch. And now you don't have the lectin problem. One of the things about nutrition that I really want you to think through is that we love absolutes. We want to say, this is bad, this is good. And we go into these camps. The only camp I'm in is the anti-Western diet camp, the processed food camp. I can't find anything good there. So, but when it comes to all the other eating styles, they all have an upside and they all have a downside. If I have an autoimmune condition and I'm eating some of the foods I just talked about, could I boil them? Let me see if I could boil them, or could I completely get rid of them and then add them back in and see if my autoimmune symptoms flare up? If I don't have an autoimmune condition, could I look at these and say, okay, I eat a lot of those, I do fast a lot, I struggle in my fasting window, maybe I need to add in more minerals and vitamins so that I thrive better in my fasted state. Or somebody like me, who doesn't have an autoimmune condition, does well in my fasting window, I look at information like this and I'm like, everything in moderation. Just make sure I'm not having these 7 foods every single day, which I'm not, and sprinkle them in and out. So we got to get out of the absolute when it comes to nutrition and learn what the heck we're eating. It's the most important tool you have for your health. I absolutely believe food is medicine. So let's know what foods we're eating and which ones work best for us, okay? I got another book for you. It's called Eat Like a Girl. You will now know for your feminine body how to metabolically switch. I hope it helps. Hopefully you know, but I think there still is a lot of myths out there in the world around what type of fat actually contributes to heart health and what type of fat actually can support good heart health. So I want to kind of break this down in the simplest way possible. Before I do that, I got to talk about 2 things. So first, we got to talk about cholesterol, and this is a really important one, because so many people still are looking at cholesterol as being a major indicator or a major contributor to poor heart health. But I want to read a statistic to you actually from the American Heart Association, and I'll leave the link so that you can actually go look this up yourself. This is the statistic. A few years ago, the American Heart Association said that dietary cholesterol has no impact on heart disease risk, and that it's no longer a nutrient of concern. So we've got the cholesterol in your body, and we have the cholesterol in food. And what we are now realizing is that cholesterol in food isn't contributing to cardiovascular challenges. So that leaves us with, well, what in food is actually contributing to cardiovascular events. And it really breaks down into 3 categories. The first category are what we call trans fats. And trans fats are fats you're gonna find in my friend or not friend, the typical potato chip. So these are your partially hydrogenated oils. So I want to read you a couple of statistics about trans fats, and then I want to talk about how you find these on a label, because the important thing is not just knowing that these are contributing to cardiovascular problems, but the important thing is to know how do you locate them. But when it comes to trans fats, there's a couple of really, really scary statistics. Trans fats alone can have caused several 100,000 cardiovascular deaths a year. Several 100,000 a year, one study found. They also, in 2020, the US banned partially hydrogenated oils because of their ability to contribute to cardiovascular disease. The thing I want to say on that one is that in 2020 we banned it, but they gave them, the food companies, like the potato chip companies, they gave them several years to be able to slowly move it out of our food system. So you still are going to need to read your labels and see if partially hydrogenated oils are on that label, because that is a trans fat that is contributing to cardiovascular problems. Now, one thing that I don't talk enough about when it comes to food, and I found some really interesting research on it when it comes to trans fats, is how much. Like if you sit down and you eat like a whole bag full of partially hydrogenated oil potato chips, like are you going to get a heart attack the next day? Well, the research on this is really interesting. It shows that just 4 grams of artificial trans fats per day, that's less than a teaspoon per day, increases your heart risk by 23%. So if you eat a half a bag of potato chips, you are ingesting several grams in half of a bag of potato chips. So if you have a potato chip habit and you're doing the whole bag, you may actually be hitting your trans fat limit every single day, increasing your chances of a cardiovascular event by 23%. So this is why understanding ingredient labels and knowing where these partially hydrogenated oil trans fats live is really important. A couple other of these trans fats that I want you to look out for. Soybean oil. So that you'll find that in the, and for those of you who maybe don't know where the ingredient label is, it's right here on the back underneath. When I look at an ingredient label, I don't go to the calories. The first thing I go to is the ingredients, because ingredients matter before anything else. Let's see if this one, okay, so this one has soybean in it, it has canola, it has corn, and it has sunflower oil. So they put it under the guise of vegetable oil, which is my other trans fats that I want to point out. So we have partially hydrogenated, we have soybean oil, and then we have your typical vegetable oils. And those are all inflammatory trans fats. And then you add in the canolas, you add in the corns, the sunflower, the safflower. When you hear me talk about the bad fats, I'm talking about these trans fats that they are sprayed on our food to enhance taste, and they actually create this dopamine addiction to certain foods, and they are contributing massively to cardiovascular challenges. So there's so many other chip options. Make sure, coming down the road, depending on when you watch this, I've started a cooking show, and one of the episodes that I filmed was with Marie Forleo, and we did a chip throwdown. And we talk about how do you understand chips. It's so good. I can't wait for you all to get it. It'll be coming out here very shortly, depending on when you are watching this. But yep, this stuff, not good. The other reason, by the way, they put these oils on there is it enhances flavors. It creates this dopamine effect, but it will actually increase the shelf life. So I'm actually I'm not gonna eat these Lay's potato chips. I'm gonna put them in my cupboard, and I'll just keep pulling them out for whenever I want to do a video to like tell you not to eat these. And it'll literally stay exactly like this. It's never like, did this in my clinic where we had a box of toxic food that I would bring out when I was teaching my patients what to avoid. And that box literally lived in our back of our cabinet, in a closet in my clinic, and with all these processed foods, with all these trans fats in them. And it stayed there for years, and they looked exactly like the day you would buy them. That's horrible. It's like dead food that is killing you. Okay, that's trans fats. So the second type of food that I want you to avoid is the deep fried food. So, these are your French fries, even your sweet potato fries, these are your chicken tenders. What happens when we take a fat and we heat it up really high is we create something called advanced glycation. This is where we start to take these fat molecules and they start to bond together and form like a syrupy sugar that is going to start to stick to the arterial walls that are within your body. So let's walk you through this for a hot moment. When we are doing deep fried foods, if this was your artery and you have blood that's flowing through your artery, each time you are eating these deep fried foods, you are creating like a plaquing on the inside of these arteries. That increases the pressure within the artery, so you're going to start to see higher blood pressure, but it also slows down how much blood can start to flow to different areas of your body. Within your blood lives your red blood cell, and the red blood cell's job is to deliver oxygen to your tissues to keep them youthful and functioning well. One of those places is your brain. So when we are doing a lot of deep fried foods, what we're doing is that we're slowing down the delivery of these red blood cells, which is slowing down the delivery of oxygen to tissues, and your tissues are going to age much quicker. The challenge with deep frying is that we've taken a food, a harmful fat, and we've heated up, which is making those molecules stick together, which is making your blood much more viscous, which is adding to that plaquing on the side of the wall. So it's really important that we stay away from these deep fried foods that are fried in these trans fats. So these are we're back at your vegetable oils, your canola oils. When we heat them up, we make them 3 times as more harmful for the body, which is why French fries aren't great, which is why fried foods like this aren't great. Now, if you're cooking at home, you could do a more natural oil. So like this actual chicken tender came from my health food store. And believe it or not, it was fried in rice bran oil. So, if you did like avocado oil, or you did like a coconut oil, and you made it at home, what you would find is that you're not going to end up with this glycation process that's creating this plaquing on the side of your arteries, affecting the blood flow and oxygen distribution to your body. So it's not like you have to give up fried foods. Let's just fry with something different and do it at home. You can ask when you go out what they're frying those foods with, but I can tell you I've done it. And even at the best restaurants, it's always the same thing. It's always canola oil or vegetable oil. And some of the really toxic places are still using partially hydrogenated oils. So deep frying, this is bad. Deep frying is even worse. Okay. Number 3 for cardiovascular health. And this is one that got talked about a long time ago. I don't know why we're not addressing it as much as we should, but when it comes to cardiovascular health, the most important thing that you need to look at food-wise is your sugar load. So I want to give you a couple of interesting studies that I found on how sugar contributes to cardiovascular health. So the first thing, and this is how I want you to think of this, the first thing is that every time you eat sugar, it creates this low grade of inflammation in your body. And that inflammation, again, is going to start to create higher blood pressure because it's going to create more pressure within the arterial walls. And if it stays there long enough, it can lead to this plaquing, and you combine that with the fried foods and the trans fats, and now you are accelerating the process of putting you down the path towards a cardiovascular event. So it's the chronic low-grade inflammation of sugar that's the problem, and it's every time you're eating sugar. It would be like, over time, it would be like if you had a sprained ankle that never went down and you just walked on it and walked on it and walked on it. After a while, that ankle is going to be a mess. The muscles are going to be tight. The joints are going to degenerate much quicker, and you're not going to be able to use the functionality of your ankle. Well, the same thing's happening is that you're inflaming, just like you can see an inflamed ankle from a sprain. The challenge we have with these foods is you can't see the inflammation, but it's there. And your doctor is seeing it on things like your blood work. So we want these three, it's so simple. It's not hard. It's trans fats, it's deep fried, and it's sugar. And if we start to pull just those three out, then now you have a better chance at improving your cardiovascular health. Now, last thing I want to say, and I'm going to keep saying this in as many different places that I possibly can because this keeps showing up on my socials. So many of you recently saw that there was a study that came out showing that intermittent fasting increased cardiovascular problems by 91%. So I did an Instagram live on this. I dove into the research. Since we're doing a video here on cardiovascular health, I just want to point this out. So it was not a peer-reviewed study, meaning they did not vet the study for proper research techniques. It was also done over many, many years, and over a long several-year period, they had people call in and answer questions 2 days out of several years. And one of those questions was, do you intermittent fast? And if they said yes, they put them into one category of these are all the intermittent fasters. Now, everybody has a little different response to what intermittent fasting is. I've met people who are like, oh yeah, intermittent fasting, I only drink juice in the morning. That's not intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is where you're letting your blood sugar come down and you're switching over into that fasted state. So the fact that they called in, they said they were intermittent fasting, nobody checked to see what type of intermittent fasting they were doing. Now, the other thing on that study that was really interesting is that 27% of the people that were intermittent fasters actually were smokers too. And then the other part of this study that was completely erroneous is they didn't look at what they ate. And so if you have a fasting lifestyle and you're smoking and you're eating this, I can't tell you that you're going to prevent a cardiovascular event. These foods cause a cardiovascular problem. Smoking causes a cardiovascular problem. And just because you're fasting with all of that doesn't mean that fasting is going to help you overcome that cardiovascular challenge that you are setting yourself up for. So I had to address that because we're on this, and I know a lot of you have asked. And I really think that we have to learn to stop taking things out of context and put them more into some kind of formula that we can work with. And when we're looking at cardiovascular health, one of the absolute most important thing if you want to prevent a heart attack or a stroke is you got to get off these foods. Like today. Like leave this video, and if you've got Lay's potato chips in there, go and throw them away. Like now. Or hide them away from somebody, from yourself. That somebody might be yourself. But you want to get them out of your life. And then fried foods, really avoid fried foods because of the intensity of plaquing that it can create around the artery wall. And then remember that sugar is like a chronic inflammation situation every single day that you eat that. If you take these three things out, and I won't even address the smoking, and you build yourself a fasting lifestyle, I absolutely promise you that you will be in great cardiovascular shape. It is what the research says. It's what we're seeing here on YouTube after millions of people doing this. We've got to get into the nuance of these buzz headlines that are coming through that are trying to scare you around eating well and fasting and the power that food and metabolic switching can have on your health. We have definitely come at a time where it is profitable to keep us medicated. It is profitable to keep us sick. And I'm trying to use platforms like YouTube here to educate you all on making really smart choices so you don't fall prey to those sensational headlines, and that you have the tools to navigate this new world we're in where ingredients are very difficult and misinformation around food is everywhere. So why I think fasting works so well was because it gave everybody a break from the complicated food system. So now here on YouTube, I'm inviting you back into the food conversation, and let's get into the nitty gritty. You're going to see a lot more food videos here on my YouTube channel. And I will tell you that there is a book for women on hormones and food coming out at the end of 2024, November 2024, called Eat Like a Girl, where I talk about the foods you should be adding in. So as always, I hope this helps. This is the kind of information your doctor should have told you. Those of you who are doctors or nurses and send your patients here, kudos to you. I'm trying to support you and help you. I know you're living a very hectic, busy career. And the more we take videos like this, we take research like I'm going to link below, and we start to educate the masses, the more everybody wins and the healthier the world will be. So as always, I hope that helps, and put in the comments if you have any strategies for getting off these addictive foods, because they are addictive. So if you have found some strategies, put in the comments, and always, I'm cheering you on. I hope that helps. Okay, if you love this video, you're gonna wanna check out the next video of my food series. 5 foods that will sabotage weight loss. And they're gonna surprise you. These are ones that you're probably doing thinking they're helping you lose weight.